Maybe you can tell us, man. So what occurred out here yesterday?
Well, the sheriff came at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was dark to evict us and me. But what happened was they were given orders not to touch me and not to arrest me. So what they did, they pulled the covers from underneath me and basically left me on the ground without getting evicted. But they took all of our stuff, took our clothes, took our tents, and that was it. And they put this fence up, but they're supposed to be opening up the dysfunctional museum. And we're like, well, it's like chess, move, counter move, okay? We're having peaceful, nonviolent protests in the yard. And they said they support peaceful, nonviolent protests. And then the governor's got a moratorium on evictions. What? Well, what you guys doing up here? And when we had that little fake Zoom hearing, we didn't have video. We had to call another number to get audio. So the other side had audio and visual, and we just had video.
So you did go to a hearing on this? I saw that the sheriff had issued a notice on April 30th saying that they had intentions to evict.
They had attempted. So it's like, what kind of game are they playing? You know? Then in their paperwork, they say I didn't stay here. And they completely dodged the fact that we had the purchase and sell agreement. And when you have a purchase and sell agreement, the only way you can get past the purchase and sell agreement is to foreclose on it for non-performance. You can't just go and sell the property to somebody else when you can't sell.
So are you saying that you guys are the rightful owners of this building, or that the Urban League is not the rightful owners of the building?
According to our well, first of all, we're the ones that fought for it for 30 years.
What do you mean when you say you fought for it?
Well, first of all, the museum concept came out of the fight against the police station on 23rd in Yesler, next to the fire station. So I was thinking, black folks is always against something. What are we for? So I said, well, let's be for a cultural center, African American Heritage Museum and Culture Center. So the group fighting against the police station collected 10,000 petition signatures against the police station and in support of the museum and Culture Center, African American Museum. And the issue was, in the 60s and early 70s, Black Power raised the issue about cultural deprivation. And the Native Americans, they were only fighting for, fishing rights in the streams. They weren't fighting for their land back. So Black Power raised the issue of, no, you need to give the Native Americans their land back. Same way the black folks in South Africa want their land back. So I was one of the original occupiers of El Centro de la Raza. Because back then there wasn't no real Chicano movement. Everything was Black Power. The Japanese had just got out of concentration camp. They were quiet. The only ones that was really culturally active was the Chinese in Chinatown. So the whole concept of us being, quote, quote, culturally deprived, brought over here, your wife sold this way, Your daughter sold that way. Your son sold that way. And now they're saying our families are falling apart. Are falling apart? Are you crazy? You tore them apart. You talking about a black welfare queen? Are you crazy? How you gonna work for 400 years and don't get paid? But then when you get 2 welfare checks, you're a welfare queen. And the banksters and the corporations, that's where they get their money from, the government, you know. So they came and stole our stuff in spite of the fact that we have filed a RICO racketeering lawsuit, because all that's going on around here is the RICO racketeering they started from the government, settler government they set up to place the Indians on reservations while they stole all their land. And the Supreme Court ruled, Plessy versus Ferguson, Dred Scott, that black folks had no rights a white man was bound to respect. So nothing's changed. They just keep trying to make us think, oh, we freed you from the plantation. Yeah, but for 3 years, we weren't slaves and we weren't citizens. We were free and independent people.
So what is the claim here on this particular building now? This has been decades now with you in particular and with this building. Me personally, I had claimed to this. I went to elementary school here. This used to be Summit K-12 back in the day. And I actually went to elementary school, and they closed the school to build the I-90 lid. And so, like, you've had a long history here at this building. What brought you back to this building back in 2020? When did you arrive here in 2020, and what brought you back here?
Well, on Juneteenth, 2020, we marched from Madison, 30,000 strong. So we had 30,000 people in the park. So it was time to take our building back because...
and why do you say it's your building?
Because we got a purchase and sale agreement signed by then Superintendent John Stanford and Bob Flowers, who was then our African American Heritage Museum and Culture Center president of the board. That's it. Now, what the Urban League is claiming it's theirs was signed by James Kelly. He's the one that pulled the gun on White King in Rainier Beach. He's the head of the city gun buy program. He's carrying a gun into a public school. And then the other signature for the school district was the crooked lawyer for the school district, Ron English.
So are you saying that the Urban League doesn't rightfully own this building?
And they know they don't own it. And it's a bunch of white folks up, because the Urban League is just a front for white money when they want to undermine and sabotage. That's why the Urban League was set up by white corporate America to get black intellectuals, in particular, away from that Marcus Garvey, Chinatown do for self. You don't see Chinatown marching in the street and whining and crying. Why? They got cultural unity. They work together. And if you coming down in Chinatown, spend your money, it's okay.
So you can imagine that the average person who doesn't really understand ecosystems in the black community, when someone hears you and they hear you saying that the Urban League is working against the interests of the black community as you see it, I mean, for some people that's difficult to believe based upon the Urban League's name and reputation.
Hey, all over the country, they got a site on the internet called Urban League Watch about all the corruption, not just in Seattle, all across the country. They do the same thing. First of all, they don't have no ideas. That's why Malcolm X talks so bad about them. You know, they have no ideas. They call themselves integrationists. And integration for a weaker power is called disintegration. So they've never done anything in Seattle.
Well, I mean, sir, we're sitting here at Urban League Village. This is affordable housing for poor people.
Yeah, they're trying to steal somebody else's ideas. They spent $1 million of our money for what goes in the museum, recording studio, art, music, you know, because we had the first active museum where young people don't come in and just you put handcuffs on them, use them for a head count, march them out the door. Not only did they see art, but we had art rooms for them to do art.
Well, then, is your issue then with the Urban League, or is your issue with the Northwest African American Museum, or both? Or
the museum don't own anything, and the
Okay.
lady from the museum is from Detroit. She don't know nothing about black folks in Seattle. How you gonna have somebody in Detroit falling apart? If she wants to do something to help black folks, she should do it in her community where the people know her and her background.
let me just jump in here though. So this Northwest African American Museum it's a private. It's not like the History and Industry Museum or something else. This is a private museum where
No,
people.
It's not a private museum. It's a nonprofit museum, basically still in our name, our concept.
Who's our name when you say our name? When you said it's still our name.
Seattle people, that's good. If she wants to do something, Detroit's falling apart. Motown moved, Detroit's falling apart. So if she is so concerned about black culture and black folks, she needs to take care of her own neighborhood. She don't need to come here and undermine what we're trying to do. And guess what? Our museum is in a room with computers in it for genealogy. You walk down the hallway, they got some posters and pictures on the wall. And then you go into this part over here that used to be the old gym. It's a meeting room. There's no exhibits in here.
Right. So, all right. And I'll move past this to the bigger issue. The bigger issue is the building.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is shouldn't anybody, if they want to have a museum and they want to talk about whatever they want to talk about black people, shouldn't they be able to do that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I want to go open a museum tomorrow and I just want to focus on a museum of black athletes that came out of Seattle, an African American athlete, shouldn't I be able to do that? I mean, there's a monopoly on museums?
No, that's what this is about. They don't have nobody in there that did anything in Seattle. They don't have my dad in there, the first black electrical engineer in the whole Northwest that started, him and his partner started Liberty Bank. They don't have nothing in here about people that actually, who was the first black architect in Seattle? You know, it's just ridiculous. It's not a museum. Even their black newspapers and magazine articles, it's down at the Mohi Museum. You ask them, well, why?
So is the issue that this can be a better museum, or you want to have your vision of a museum here?
We are going to have a world-class museum. We're not going to have no. Why is our museum the only one with Northwest in the name? El Centro, $100 million program. Their first building, all programming. Then they built the big apartment buildings on their playground. So why is the city treating black different than they treated the Mexican and the Native American? Native Americans got a $100 million program, and Nordic Heritage got a multi.
The Nordic Museum is real nice. I said the Nordic Museum is real nice.
Well, is it like this?
Well, I mean, they built it from the ground up.
No, is it like this? No, but they got in it. They got exhibits. They got something in it. A room with computers in it, and walking down a hall with some posters on it, and into this old gym, which is a meeting room, is not a museum.
All right, so
not one politician will come up here and see if there's a museum here after 20 years.
I got one more question on the museum thing, and then we'll talk about the legalities and the building and everything else. So, I mean, is the issue really that it's like, okay, NAAM is here with their museum, or is the issue that the group that you represent doesn't have a space to be able to really expand upon a museum as you see it? Like, are you saying that these guys can't exist? Or are you saying that you should as well exist?
It's embarrassing to bring anybody here and show this and call it a museum. Museums, and now I'm going back and forth to Africa working with all the museums in Africa. They got culture, no money. We got money, no culture. And she knows what a real museum is. Because in Detroit, they got a real museum. Chicago got a real museum. Dallas got a real African-American museum. Washington, D.C. got a real African-American museum. This is why our youth is in the street. Because we use this kind of garbage and try to sell it to our community, especially young people, as a museum. What is in here for a young person to see or do? Absolutely nothing. Even little grade school
So, what's
kids.
your vision then? How would your museum be different?
No, they spent $100 million on the mayor's final report. They made
Which
$1
mayor?
million. Norm Rice.
So you're talking about
They
Mayor
spent
Norm Rice,
yeah,
$1 million.
$1 million on what's supposed to be in here. And it says no apartments. So why are we 90% of the building apartments? And the museum is no museum. It's when you follow the paperwork, which is on the African American Heritage Museum and Culture Center.org blog, you can follow the whole. That's why we filed the RICO racketeering lawsuit, because this is nothing but racketeering.
And who do you claim is racketeering? I mean, racketeering, you got to have a few people colluding together for a purpose.
Oh, no, we got about 20 or more. And we got slots for 100. First of all, Royer.
Ed Royer?
Charlie Royer.
Charlie Royer, the former mayor, Royer?
Yeah, he's the one that started it. Charlie Royer. Jim Deers was head of Department of Neighborhoods. Steve Shepard was his assistant. They wanted to do right, but from the top, they pressured them to not do a museum and culture center, but to do apartments. So they flipped our concept for African American Museum and Culture Center into the 36 apartments was really originally called condominiums. And we jumped them about that. Well, if you have condominiums and you sell the building, the condominium owners are going to run the building. So then they said, oh, low-income apartments. The only difference between a low-income apartment and a condominium is a contract with the people that move in. It's just, if you study what RICO racketeering is, this is a classic example of RICO racketeering and fraud. They done stole over $5 to $10 million with a fake museum. And anybody could go in there and compare this museum with any museum. The only museum that's worse than this one is the police museum at the bottom of Jackson. It's a storefront museum.
So now you've occupied the space for almost 1 year. You said Juneteenth.
Yeah.
It's now, and we're now in the middle of May. It's June. It's almost been 1 year. And now you've been evicted.
How am I evicted? I'm still here.
Okay.
They had instructions: don't touch me, and don't arrest me, because guess what? When they do an arrest, now.
Well, they've got to trespass you first to arrest you. So you're saying that the sheriffs never said that you were trespassing. Like, you can't just arrest. You see what I'm saying? There has to be a grounds for it.
First of all, there's no evictions, okay? Because the governor said there's a moratorium on evictions.
Right, and so this is this gray area, and maybe I'm trying to get some insight from you.
Let me
and
explain
I'm gonna reach out
something
to
to
the sheriff, because this isn't technically an eviction, because you weren't a leaseholder in the building or even inside of the building. You're out front.
Not only was it fraudulent, we have the purchase and sell agreement to the building.
Did the sheriff recognize that agreement?
Who?
Did the sheriff yesterday, when the sheriff came, did the sheriff recognize that you have an agreement here?
They come here talking about there's no stay on the appeal from the Zoom hearing. Why? Who's supposed to put the... And when we filed the RICO racketeering lawsuit and then had the eviction removed to the federal court, guess what? Nothing can be happening until the federal judge...
So are you saying that the sheriff came and they swept...
They followed their own rules.
Without, even though you're saying that this was in appeal in court?
Did the same thing that...
So you went for a temporary restraining order against the eviction?
The judge ruled exactly what the Supreme Court ruled in Plessy versus Ferguson in Dred Scott. That
What's
black
that, sir?
folks have no rights that a white judge or is bound to respect, because they didn't respect their own. Because once you file your federal lawsuit and motion to remove the eviction to federal court, it stops everything until the federal judge rules. And then the sheriff said, oh, well, there's no stay on the eviction. It's automatic stay when you motion to...
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's something that's under appeal...
Law. It's automatic. Right. No, that's not the appeal.
Right.
We filed a federal RICO racketeering lawsuit.
So which Superior Court judge then signed off for the eviction?
First of all, that's irrelevant. The court signed off on it. What's the name of the judge? They're all crooks. And guess what else? You know what the bar stands for? British Accreditation Registry. And then guess who they got in the court in Washington State? They got the slave owner, George Washington, the rapist, the Indian killer. They might as well have Adolf Hitler's picture in the court, because guess what? Everything Adolf Hitler did in Nazi Germany, he copied from Washington and Jefferson. Except Washington and Jefferson came over on some boats, encountered the Native Americans, killed them, and before that, they didn't know how to raise no food, so every time one of them died, they ate them, cannibalism. Adolf Hitler was in his own place, dealing with his own people. The only reason why no institution in the world is named after Adolf Hitler, because he was doing it to Europeans, Now, it's okay to exterminate Native Americans, steal their land, go to Africa and kidnap us, beat us, rape us, that's okay. You can do that. Why do you think Washington is a hero and Hitler's a demon? That don't even make sense. Everything, the model for Adolf Hitler was U.S.
So what's next? I mean, the sheriff came
here. Let me tell
here.
you what's next. We're going to have our museum.
You're going to have it right here?
Listen, we're being nice about it. The community, the street community.
And when you say street community, what is that?
That means the people that's been left out. All these bourgeois, go on the Urban League Village Board. It's a bunch of white folks, Asians, and some bourgeois, self-hating Negroes. Not one person that ever did something concrete for black folks and advocate is on their board. They got all these people from nowhere, and it's just like I said about the sister that's trying to run the fake museum. Why we got Northwest and why is our museum only one with Northwest in? Why they don't have anything connection with the Caribbean or Africa? It's only how you gonna have a African American museum that's not rooted in Africa, which is our base.
And so you're saying this will be a museum?
Yeah, we're going to make it a museum by any means necessary. You hear what Malcolm said? By any means necessary. And he also said the price of freedom is death. The Vietnamese lost 3.5 million people to get their win. Malcolm X said, we're not the first people to be oppressed. And if you want to get your freedom, study how other people that were oppressed got their freedom. And none of them ever got it through integration, which is disintegration.
Sir, do you feel that there might be a violent conflict on the horizon?
There's already a violent conflict. Police are gunning us down in the street every day, and these Negroes ain't saying boo about it. Gentrification is the extermination of black folks, and these Negroes ain't saying nothing about it. They're pushing the gentrification program, weed and seed, that Norm Rice brought to this city, you know. And then Norm didn't put us out the 8 years. He was the mayor. Soon as he was not the mayor, he on the Paul Shell, the white boy, to put us out. And I warned Paul Shell, don't go for that. He didn't put us out the 8 years he was mayor. So why should he be on your back now to put us out? So when the mayor had his accident, he deserved it, you know? And they're gonna have some more accidents. You know what happened to Ed Pratt?
No.
Go do the research on Ed Pratt and see how he ended up in the cemetery. Mm-hmm. You know.
Sir, to be more specific, do you have plans to occupy this building?
Listen, the young people are not going for this Uncle Tom's, just like in South Africa. Julius Malema and the economic freedom fighters are not going for that Uncle Tom ANC, where they talking about apartheid is over, and white folks are still controlling 90% of the land, the diamond mines, the gold mines, and 90% of the economy. Black folks are still living in shanties, and white folks, after 27 years of so-called democracy, is still living in shacks, shantytown shacks. And one black child going to school fell in the outhouse and drowned. That's how sad it is in South Africa. Is on the same path.
So are you comparing South Africa, and I used to live down in Johannesburg. I lived and worked there. So I'm familiar, and I'm familiar with Malema, and I'm familiar with, it's a lot of people that are pissed down there because although they had a black president, it didn't equate into actual equality for black people. But are you comparing South Africa and the ANC and coming out of apartheid to our situation here in Seattle?
They're not out of apartheid. The same way we catching hell in Seattle, they catching hell in South Africa. But they have a party and a leader, and the young people is behind the economic freedom fighters, is what it's about. We're in worse shape now. It's just like we had Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street.
So you're saying that here in Seattle, maybe like a lot of cities, there's very much more than one black community. And what you're saying is that what you mentioned was the brothers on the streets, young brothers, this black community, and you said that it's much different than people that are on this board at the Urban League and everything else. And what I hear you saying is that this young group of black men and women are the people who are very supportive of your actions here?
Yeah, and guess what? They're not going to tolerate these Uncle Toms. And that's why these Uncle Toms is running around with security and wearing guns and stuff and looking over their shoulder, because they know what they're doing is pushing self-hate. And our young people is in the street. They got them confused because they teaching them George Washington is their hero. How can a slave master be a black child's hero? They got a school right down the street named George Washington. They got black children going in it, respecting, and they teaching them George Washington never told a lie. Cut down the cherry tree. They taught us the same thing. we grow up and find out George Washington was a slave master and a hater of black folks. You know. So these Negroes ain't saying nothing about that. They scared to talk the truth. And they mad at me because I tell them the truth about what they do. And I'm militarily trained, and I don't take the instructions of Dr. King, turn the other cheek, you know.
So what are your thoughts on the people, the 36 units that are here in this building? I mean, it had almost been 1 year since you'd occupied this space out here. There's clear, I mean, there are some sympathizers here in the building, but there was also people who did not welcome the presence of out here, the occupied presence.
Just like one of the loudmouths that's so smart in there, I said, put your money together and go to Bellevue and buy a house. Don't come and clown the museum. You see what it says? It said museum. It doesn't say apartments. It says African American Heritage. It says Northwest African Museum. So it's obvious you know this is supposed to be a museum and not apartments. And if they had any backbone, when they found out what the issue was, they said, oh, their Urban League is trying to pit housing against culture. Our kids are not shooting each other in the head because they don't have housing. Because they run home after they shoot somebody. They don't have, and they're in the cemetery because they've been taught self-hate by the Seattle Public Schools. That is another one of the training and indoctrination systems. They don't have an educational system because the educational system is ennobling. It makes people better. How you go to school for 8 years and 12 years and all you learn is how they shoot somebody to look like you. You know, why don't you go shoot the enemy that enslaved you? No, you're scared of them. It's like Malcolm said, you go all over the world killing people for white folks. And then when it comes to protecting your family and your children and your wife, you don't have no blood to shed. So here we are 50 years later after Malcolm, and we walking in the street talking about black lives what? Well, that's why murder is against the law, because all lives matter. What kind of madness is that? They done raised $99 million and it's all disappeared. Talking about the Black Lives Matter organization. There wasn't a, the Seattle King County Black Lives Matter so-called board. Nobody ever heard of them. Nobody ever heard of them. All over the country. That's why we're in the mess we're in. Because we don't build institutions. And this garbage they call in a museum is an insult. Ain't got Mimi Gates on the board. And she come from the Seattle Art and Art Museum. She knows what a museum looks like. And she knows this is not no museum. So why are you co-signing this garbage? Because that's how they keep black folks ignorant, especially black children.
So why is it not that this building's here, it's Urban League, it's NAAM and everything else, why is it not to fulfill your vision at a different space? Why is it so important to you that it's this specific location? Why not build something else?
We got 10,000 signatures. First of all, they could come up with an idea, go somewhere and fight for it. We've been fighting for this building for 40 years. We came up with the idea and concept of a museum. Urban League ain't never come up with no building no black institution. Their job, corporate America, white corporate America, is undermine and sabotage. What black institutions do we have in this city? We don't have no major business. We don't have no major culture center. We don't have no major anything. So that's why white folks are saying, oh, we don't have a black community in Seattle. We don't have a black community in Seattle. Why? Because they plan on exterminating black folks. Because if you don't have a neighborhood and you don't have a community, and guess what? Institutions is what creates conditions in the community. Got ignorant people, you have schools. If you got poor people, you have businesses. You know, if you don't know who you are, you build a cultural institution and teach your people who they are.
Right.
Our people don't even know who they are. I don't want to go to Africa. I'm not no African. Well, what are you? I'm an American. What's American?
So then I see here, and we see it's a generator just arrived. There's a tent. There's a few tents. There's air mattresses. Sir, what's your plan moving forward? You plan to continue to stay here, or more people coming back here? I mean, COVID's reducing. One second, COVID's reducing. This door is going to open here soon because COVID is reducing.
Who you think is going to be the first one in the door? We out here in the yard being peaceful. Who do you think when they open up, who's going to be the first one in the door? Raising hell. How are they going to open up an institution when you got a bunch of young people waiting to get inside the building?
And then what? Inside the building, and then what?
Anybody that comes in and tries to, because first thing they're going to say, where's the museum? Also, it's a fake museum, huh? And if we have to bring the police chief and the mayor and the fire chief and all the politicians in with us, we'll bring them in with us and say, hey, where's our museum? They've been raising money for 20 years, and there's no museum. It's a fraud. It's RICO racketeering.
Do you have any intentions to peacefully leave this space with this enters up? I mean, you keep saying any means necessary.
All them sheriffs came up here had guns. You coming up here with guns, huh? You think you're the only ones that got guns? Only way the police can police 500,000 people with 1,000 people is when they agree to it. And when black folks start saying, police, we're not going for you killing us no more. Do you know when the last time the Seattle police killed a black person in the Central District?
Not sure, sir.
2000, well, the same year they had 911. Because before 911, the mayor...
2001, sir?
Yeah. Before 911, the mayor in Seattle with a black eye was a big national issue. But when them folk was running and them buildings was coming down, they was running from that cloud. Now all of a sudden, the mayor in Seattle with a black eye and waking up wasn't a big thing anymore. But the Seattle police haven't killed a black person in the Central District since then. It's 20 years, and they won't even brag about it. No, you don't need to kill people, you know. So one of the things I'm most proud of is there's 44 black men alive because I had to go and do 21 months in the penitentiary because the mayor had an accident. And when he woke up, because the mayor is the one that's in charge of the police.
That's true.
So if you want to control the police, you got to control the mayor and hold the mayor responsible. Why do you think Seattle's mayor now is running out the back door?
So then, sir, as far as next steps, I also saw something on the internet that said that you were going to actually put your name in the hat for mayor.
Yeah, because that's where you put your political agenda. I'm the anti-candidate. I'm the candidate. I don't want no votes. I don't want no endorsements. All I want you to do is read the 10-point program, problem solution. First problem, give the Indians land back. Because if the Native Americans, whose land this is, don't get justice, who else is going to get justice? Mm-hmm. You know, the police. The team I quarterback at Shoreline in 64 and 65, half the team joined the police department. There was 30 people that I knew before they were on the police department, while they were on the police department, and now some I have to go visit in the nursing homes because they didn't have strokes. My center became the spokesperson for the Seattle Police Department. Whenever my people on the police department would hear my name over the police scanner, they'd come, take me away from the other police officer, put me in their car, take me around the corner, and kick me out their car. Because I was their quarterback. And they all liked me. I get along with everybody. But I'm not for clown show, abuse, and injustice. And Carver Gayton was my history teacher and football coach at Garfield. And if you see the document that, and what he said about me, you know, first of all, why are you, because you're personally involved with me, acting a fool and saying, don't put me in any position of authority in U.S. Army because I'm not about doing wrong. If anything wrong is being done, he's not going to be part of it.
Sir, it sounds to me like, and by the looks of things here, with this generator and some other stuff coming in, that you have no intentions to leave this property.
Let me say it again. These young people are going to take this building by any means necessary when the time comes. And all these Uncle Tom Negroes and these house Negroes in these apartments need to find another place to go live. Because in the mayor's, Norm Rice's final report on what's supposed to be in this building, it said no apartments. And it lists what's supposed to be in there. For
How
the museum.
committed to this are you, sir?
Say that again?
How committed to this are you?
Hey, listen. I've been doing this since 81. And it's like these young people are standing up. George Floyd murder tipping point, mobilizing. Yesterday's, they come in here at 5 o'clock in the morning, stealing all of it. It's not supposed to be eviction, but they don't evict the person they supposed to be evicted. You know, they left me laying on the ground because they had orders, don't touch him and don't arrest him. Because if you arrest him, he's going to have a court case and he can do discovery and get in our rotten, no good paperwork. Because none of the media is going down to the school district and asking them, well, what about this purchase and sale agreement that you have with the African American Heritage Museum and Culture Center? How are you getting around that? How are you going to sell a building? Anybody know anything about real estate? You can't sell a building to two people. The only way they can legitimately get around the purchase and sale agreement was to foreclose on it for non-performance. And we performed.
All right.